Capitol Report is a production of Senate Media Services.
On this week's program, we learn about the budget priorities from the Senate Minority Leader and the House Minority Leader. We'll also learn about a measure to increase teachers of color in Minnesota's classrooms. Stay tuned for this and more on this week's Capitol Report. Welcome to this week's program. I'm Shannon Lurkey. Setting spending priorities for the next budget cycle is the main task of lawmakers this session, and the battle over how to spend the state's projected $1.65 billion surplus is underway. Joining me in the studio to provide the perspective of the Senate DFL caucus is the Minority Leader, Senator Tom Bakk. Welcome.
Pleasure to be with you.
How are you changing your approach as a leader now that you're in the minority?
Well, it is much different. I mean, the legislative chambers are really, the day-to-day workings are run by the majority leader of the Senate and the Speaker in the House, and they make the day-to-day decisions relative to the flow of business, whether bills get heard or not. They're going to set the spending targets for all of the different budget divisions. So ours is really one more of a respond to what their priorities are going to be. We don't really know yet. We should know fairly soon. The Senate rules require that budget targets be given to all the divisions by the end of March. So it's a little more difficult when you don't know exactly what the flow is. I do think Senator Gazelka has been very good to work with so far, the new majority leader. He's got a tough task with only having 34 members. It takes 34 members to pass a bill. So he really has to have everybody here and everybody on the same page, and that's a tough job. We both have caucuses with a lot of diverse views from different areas of the state. Kind of keeping them all in the corral, I describe it sometimes as a real challenge, but he's been very inclusive so far, and I expect that as we move forward, and you saw it on Real ID, Democrats are going to have to be engaged and involved in the final passage. So we're going to have a little bit more to say than a party in the minority usually has because of the very close majority at 34-33. And the governor just this week did send a letter to Senator Gazelka and to the Speaker outlining where he thought the priority should be, when the deadline should be, so that we're able to have adequate time to be able to get the session all negotiated out and finish on time.
What do you think should be done with the surplus, the $1.65 billion that's projected?
Well, the other day we were at a legislative panel, the four leaders, and that was a similar question was asked as the final question that morning, and I happened to be the last one to speak, and I kind of looked down the row at the other three and said, you know, I think I've been here longer than the three other leaders combined. So I have I think a little more of a historical perspective of the ups and downs of state government revenues and expenditures. During the 90s, when the economy was really, really strong, we invested a lot of money. We cut taxes over several different years, and then when the economy slowed down in 2001, in that deep recession, we found ourselves managing deficits for more than a decade. And we used every kind of different accounting gimmick that you possibly could in order to keep the state's budget in balance, which we constitutionally have to do. And I don't want to return to that. I mean, there was a decade there where even things that everybody agreed were important, we couldn't do because we had no money, because we had overcommitted when times were real good. And we're in a period like that now. We're 8 years into this economic recovery, coming off of the 2007-8 recession. And I just would urge restraint on the part of the majorities when they set their targets, because this period of economic growth and forecasted surpluses will not last indefinitely.
So you're in agreement with Commissioner Franz that we need to have a cautious approach?
Well, I actually suggested on the day that the budget forecast came out that the additional $250 million or so between November and now, that we actually put all that into the budget reserve, because we are at an 8-year recovery. We're closer to the next recession than we are away from the last one. And that's the reason that we've been trying to build larger reserves so that we can do a better job of managing revenue shortfalls. So my caution is to not overcommit on the spending side or on the tax cut side. don't drain the budget reserve. We got to make sure that we've got adequate resources for the next economic downturn, which will come.
Well, and speaking of the budget reserve, it's being an option to pay for the Republican reinsurance plan is to pull some money from the reserve and from the Healthcare Access Fund. Another healthcare proposal is the governor's Minnesota Care buy-in. There's also ideas about a virtual high-risk pool out there to help deal with the individual market, that part of the health insurance market that has been on the verge of collapse. If some of these policies are enacted, do you think any of them will work?
Well, you know, the big uncertainty is what are they going to do in Washington, D.C., and how is that going to impact states? I think it's about a certainty that it's going to impact states in a negative way. That's why I feel very strongly that we not raid the budget reserve for some one-time fixes. The early rebate bill that helped people in the individual market who didn't qualify for the federal tax credits took $326 million out of our budget reserve. One-time money for some one-time relief, did nothing about costs next year. I actually voted against that. I didn't think it was prudent. And if you look at the actual tax policy around it, because of that rebate, people's federal tax liability will go up, and they're going to be pretty surprised when they see that as their premium deductions go down. So it wasn't a very well vetted proposal. People that make $1 million, $2 million, $5 million a year are all going to get a 25% rebate on their insurance. I do hope that this whole reinsurance idea that we're moving forward is vetted better than the first proposal was. But I'm not going to support it if it drains the state's budget reserve, because we will need that at some point.
Two more things I'd like you to weigh in on before we run out of time. Education. It seems everybody can agree that more money needs to go towards education. Where would you like to see those dollars targeted?
Well, as a caucus, I think most of our members probably would like to see some additional money on the K-12 formula. Myself personally, I have a bill that puts some additional money, about $29 million, into small schools with less than 1,500 pupils, which are largely in rural areas of the state. We've got a real challenge out there in many of these rural school districts that are small. They don't have the economies of scale that larger districts have. They have declining enrollment in a lot of these rural communities, and they're really struggling to continue to provide curriculum. So myself, from a personal perspective, I hope we can do something that will help small schools, because they seem to be the ones struggling the most in maintaining curriculum. But I think the interesting thing about the early talk about the Senate Republicans' budget targets is they're talking about spending $600 million of general fund on transportation. Senator Senjum has $200 million in his bonding bill of cash. Senator Nelson is talking about a $400 million target in education. You know, so you get the $1.6 billion goes pretty fast when you start chipping away that way. Those things I just mentioned to you are $1.2 billion right there. We haven't even talked about higher ed yet, or economic development, and everyone seems to be pretty committed to do something with broadband. The Supreme Court Chief Judge was in to see me, and the courts need $50 million. The state has pension funds that are badly underfunded. They need about $180 million to prop up the state's pension funds of all of our public employees, state and local, around the state. So I don't think there's enough money to satisfy the spending attitudes that I'm hearing kind of go around the building. So the challenge for Senator Gazelka is to figure out how you divide that pie up. And there's a lot of talk about a large tax bill of $1 billion or so. That's just not going to happen. The governor's never going to sign that bill. He shouldn't sign that bill. A tax bill along the lines of what was vetoed last year, I think, is probably in the state's prudent interest. I believe it was about between $350 and $400 million. You can do a lot with that much money. And the fact that last year's tax bill had the vote of 89% of the legislature shows you can do a lot of good tax relief that's important to people with less than $400 million. You don't need $1 billion.
Senator Bach, we've got to stop. But I want to thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you. Pleasure to be on with you.
At a press conference this week, Representative Rod Hamilton offered an emotional plea for legislation that would reform the prior authorization process for prescription drugs.
But the heart of the matter is poverty of the human heart. You know, I believe we collectively have forgotten that the common good is greater than the individual. And this is becoming about me, but it's not about me. It isn't. It's greater than that. One individual has one story, and here's the disgusting side of this whole thing. My story is I cannot get a prescription filled, even though I pay 100% of the cost for this prescription, and I have a prescription from my doctor, who's a world-renowned neurologist from the Mayo Clinic. I cannot get it filled. And here's the harsh reality of this. I am not receiving a hearing, and the reason I believe is because we will win. That is why we are not receiving a hearing. And you know, folks have been contacting me and talking about big, powerful lobbyists on the other side. Well, if they're that powerful, they'd have the damn debate. They're a bunch of cowards hiding behind a gavel.
I'm glad to be the Senate chief author of Senate File 593 because it is focused on ensuring patients with chronic diseases that they get the medication they need, and it puts the needs of the patient first. For the past 3 sessions, this legislation has had unanimous bipartisan support in the Senate. In each of the Senate committees in which it has heard, it has sailed through with strong bipartisan support. Physicians and nurses and clinic staff spend hours every day chasing approval of drugs for their patients' needs. And estimates by the widely respected Health Affairs puts the cost of administrative work, with the bulk of it being prior authorization, at more than $80,000 per physician per year. At the heart of this legislation, it is a consumer protection bill. It simply asks that health plans live up to the same contract that we as premium payers are paying for.
Joining me now in the studio to complete our series of conversations about the budget priorities of our state's caucus leaders is the House Minority Leader, Melissa Hortman. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
At the February forecast, you said the projected surplus is good news, but we need to remember the condition of the state's assets. What assets are you most concerned about?
Well, the infrastructure I'm thinking about are the roads and the bridges and the college and university system, but also our people, our assets. So we have to think about the investments we make in our workforce. Typically, Minnesota has a good track record of investing in education in both K-12 and higher education. And so when we look at the state's ability to be economically successful in the future, we only have that ability when we have a well-educated workforce. So the investments we make will determine whether we stay in that kind of top-performing economic condition. When you look at Minnesota compared to other states, we're usually one of the top performers, but we can't count on that continuing unless we keep investing.
So that brings up the topic of education, which is a question I have. You've consistently spoken on the importance of college affordability. What are your caucus's goals, both for college affordability and also for the K-12 system? It seems everybody agrees more money should go in there, but where do you want it directed?
Well, it's important when we fund the higher education system and we talk about something like a tuition freeze, that we fully fund that. So it's one thing to say here at the legislature that we support a tuition freeze. It's another thing entirely to give the money to the University of Minnesota and the state colleges and universities so that they really don't have to tap tuition. I think sometimes in the past, different people have walked around saying they're for a tuition freeze, but then they don't provide the funding so that the institutions can provide the level of service that students need without really increasing any student fees or costs.
And what about K-12?
Well, that's really important too. You know, the whole cost of K-12 is really wrapped up in people. And we know that it costs more for health insurance every year, and inflation affects teacher salaries. So if we don't keep up with inflation, we're really not allowing our school districts to have the number of teachers that they need to have reasonable sized classrooms and deliver the services that all the children need.
So in terms of assets, you also talked about roads and bridges. How would you like to see transportation funded?
Well, you know, right now we have a surplus in the general fund, and that's a little bit of accounting magic because right now we're counting inflation on the revenue side, and we don't count inflation in all areas on the spending side. So if we did do that, we would actually have a deficit in the next 2-year period. Nobody wants to say that because it's some seriously unfun data, But the truth is, we're about 200 million in the hole in the next biennium, and then 1.1 billion in the hole in the out biennium, if you count inflation. And I think we know with the Fed raising the interest rate that we are going to see a little bit more inflation, and we should be taking inflation into account. So if we fund transportation with money that's already in the general fund, knowing that we're a little bit in the hole right now, we're not really creating a secure stream of funding for transportation into the future. The way Minnesota's always done it, and there's a very few states who do it as responsibly as we do, is we have dedicated revenue to transportation. Because we know that when your local highway goes in competition with your local kindergartner, your kindergartner wins that budget fight every time. And so if we don't dedicate transportation revenues to transportation, we know when we get to tough budget times, we won't have enough to keep up. So it's dangerous to take money out of the general fund. It sounds like a good idea when we have a surplus, and we certainly can invest some of the surplus into roads and bridges, but we shouldn't count on that going into the future.
So is that a gas tax, or are you in favor of some Republican proposals to tax auto parts and those types of sales, or where would you like that money to come from?
Well, in the past, it's come from revenue streams that are constitutionally dedicated to roads and bridges, like the gas tax and tab fees and the motor vehicle sales tax. What the Republicans are talking about, the auto parts sales tax, is not a new tax, but diverting money out of the general fund. And so I don't think anybody would be in favor of increasing a tax on auto parts. That, to my understanding of what's going on, hasn't been discussed yet. But when you look at between tab fees, which the Republicans are considering, and the gas tax, I definitely prefer the gas tax because people pay it a little bit at a time. Tab fees is really tough, and then the amount of increase they're looking at in terms of tab fees, that hits somebody when they're writing their check out for their tabs. That's a big hit. So I don't think that that's the best way to do it. I don't think that's the most affordable. I think a more pay-as-you-go method is better.
Well, and based on what you've been saying here, talking about the inflation in the budget forecast, it sounds like you're in agreement with Governor Dayton that a cautious approach is necessary going forward, just because of the uncertainty and the length of the economic expansion that we've been in. So new spending, no new spending?
I think we have to be cautious about that. I think the money that we would spend that would be above the base should be investments in people that we'll be glad that we made, no matter what happens with the economy in the future. I think we have to be cautious about how much we commit in new spending, though.
The state has a healthy budget reserve, and then this projected surplus that maybe isn't so much as we think. Is there room for any tax cuts?
Well, that's where the most caution should be in place. You know, I think it's important that just like when we look at spending, we look at kind of short-term use of the additional money, that we should look at short-term tax cuts. Like if we do think that we should do some tax cuts, they shouldn't be tax cuts that persist on into the future. Just as with the spending, we should be really cautious about how much long-term spending we're dedicating. We know with the Trump administration that everything in Washington is going to change, and probably change dramatically. We have no idea what the impact of these cuts, if the very conservative budget that's being discussed is enacted, the dramatic reduction in spending that will occur, we don't know what impact that will have on the U.S. economy. And so it's not really a good time to bank on rosy economic times going into the future.
Representative Hortman, I want to thank you for coming today, and come back again soon.
My pleasure. Thank you.
The Senate E12 committee recently heard testimony on the Increased Teachers of Color Act, which would provide a variety of incentives to increase teachers of color and American Indian teachers in Minnesota.
Research shows that teachers of color overall improve achievement, especially for students of color. However, while Minnesota's student body is 31% students of color and American Indian, only 4.2% of the state's public school teachers are of color and American Indian.
During my entire educational experience, I've had a grand total of 2 teachers of color, both of them currently teaching at Woodbury High School, and I appreciate their presence more than I can say in this short amount of time. I find so much comfort in being able to say Assalamu alaikum, which means peace be with you, to my Muslim biology teacher, to share little nods and smiles with her in the hallway. And I'll never forget the way she pronounced my full name perfectly on the first day of school without hesitation. That never happens. And I also have a Chinese teacher from Taiwan, and she's able to connect with so many of my Asian friends and consistently create spaces for them to hang out and form a strong community in a way no other teacher really could.
Having a mentor would have greatly helped me navigate the process of being a new teacher. And for many of us, we have crippling student loans. For me, with my students of color, and especially specifically my Latino students, and with their families, I can see the connections instantly with being able to speak the same language, with having similar cultural experiences. When they come to school, they seek me out first for any kind of assistance that they need.
Two concerns have been widely reported in Minnesota lately: the achievement gap between students of color and white students, and a growing teacher shortage. The Increased Teachers of Color Act is a comprehensive bill that seeks to address those concerns. Joining me in the studio is the author of the bill and the chair of the Senate E12 Finance Committee, Senator Carla Nelson. Welcome.
Good morning.
The bill attempts to tackle these challenges from many fronts. I'd like to start with the Alternative Teacher Professional Pay System. What does that mean?
That's what's called the QComp, and that is a program that allows for additional pay for additional things that teachers do beyond the contract language. Some schools have opted into QComp, some have not. QComp has been expanded over the years to include things like paying for teacher evaluations. The bill that I have for expanding teachers of color actually expands QComp to allow for providing incentives for mentoring. So you can actually use QComp then to pay for some of the mentoring costs. When I was a teacher, we always, new teachers were paired with veteran teachers, and that's always a good thing, but there was never any time allowed in the schedule for that. And I'm hoping that this small step will encourage more mentorship with our veteran teachers and our new teachers to try and specifically help with that. We have a rapid teacher turnover. About 25% of our new teachers do not stay in the profession. And I think part of it is teaching is kind of an unusual thing. We have teachers who leave after 30 years of experience and tested and proven techniques, and when they retire, those skills go right out the door with the teacher. Whereas a lot of times in businesses, there's kind of this transition period. We don't really have that in the education system, where we can take what was learned from that person who's retiring and share that with the new person coming in. I'm hoping mentoring allows us to do that in a small way, with our veteran teachers being able to spend more time with our new teachers.
So it's providing funding then that's going to create that pathway for mentorship to keep those new teachers and teachers of color in the teaching profession. That's the idea?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Let's move also then to how the bill encourages schools to develop introductory courses in education. Are these introductory courses in high school or in college or both, and what's the rationale for this?
Oh, the answer is both. And this is called dual enrollment. It's been highly successful, where high school students are taking college courses that meet the high school standards and also provide college credit at the same time. It's called dual enrollment. We have things like post-secondary enrollment options, PSEO. We have concurrent enrollment. That's where the colleges teach the high school teachers to present the college curriculum right in the high school classroom. And then we have IP and AB, which are other dual enrollment courses. They've proven highly successful for all students. Students graduate quicker, they graduate with higher GPAs and lower student debt.
And the idea is to get these students thinking about the possibility of education as a career path.
And so this is building upon our existing dual enrollment or concurrent enrollment, and we are seeking higher education institutions to bring in those concurrent enrollment classes into the high schools that start students on the pathway of teacher preparation.
And so this would provide funding for school districts who would like to implement that?
Yes, it would.
Student loan indebtedness, as you know, is a growing problem, and there is a provision in this bill for student loan forgiveness. Is that just for the teachers of color? Is it for all teachers? How does that work?
So again, this bill is building on existing things that we have in place, like QComp and dual enrollment. And this is building on the teacher loan forgiveness for areas of teacher shortage. That's what our current law states. I have expanded this for the shortage to include teachers of color, for, in fact, we do have a shortage of teachers of color. So about 4% of our teachers are teachers of color, yet our student population is getting more diverse and growing very quickly. And so we're lagging in that area. And so this just expands the teacher shortage loan forgiveness program to include teachers of color.
One committee testifier spoke recently about her community of paraprofessionals at the school that she works at,
Yes.
that they're already 100% people of color. And one provision expands the Grow Your Own pathways to assist in teacher licensure for teachers of color. Yes. How does this help more teachers get licensed?
Oh, because a number of our paraprofessionals, we do have a more diverse paraprofessional population than we do of our teachers. And so this is the Grow Your Own program. Some of our universities, like St. Mary's University, Winona State University, are already doing this, where they are taking paraprofessionals who are interested and also then kind of melding those classes around maybe like in a cohort a type schedule where they can be paraprofessionals and also work towards their full teaching degree and certificate. We do that as teachers. When I was teaching full-time, but I also went back to the University of Minnesota to get my master's degree and worked through a cohort that was designed for class time around when we were not in the classroom. And it's a model like that that can be very helpful for our paraprofessionals, and that is the Grow Your Own model.
One last question. Despite the projected budget surplus, this bill will cost additional dollars. And you are also in support of Governor Dayton's education budget request, which is for an additional $371 million over the next biennium. Can the state afford these additional funds for education when there are so many other demands for health and human services and infrastructure and things like that?
There truly are way more demands than there are resources. And the governor's budget actually seeks $609 million over the base appropriations, so it would be over $18 billion. Of that, $371 million is for this. I think it's the price of entry. It's the thing that we absolutely must do. And that is we must increase the per pupil funding formula by 2% each year of the biennium. That is the bread and butter of education funding. Certainly the expenses for our school districts are going up by nearly 3%. It would cost on the formula to meet those expenses. And I think we just cannot afford to wait. Our future depends on it. We still have the stubborn achievement gap, the worst in the nation. We cannot afford that. We have a very strong workforce shortage. We have almost a crisis in not having workers. And so that is why we cannot afford to not do the 2% each year on the formula. It's the thing that our school districts are asking for. It treats every school district the same, every student the same regarding funding, no matter where their zip code is, and it provides school districts the greatest flexibility to use the funding to best meet the needs of students in their district. So I think it's the best way to go.
Senator Nelson, I hope to have you back for more on education. I want to thank you for your time today.
Thank you. Very great to be here.
Join us again next week as we delve into more topics affecting Minnesotans. I'm Shannon Lurkey, and on behalf of all of us at Senate Media Services, thanks for watching.